As part of celebrating spooky season in October, I am recording this episode live from Greenwood Cemetery in the borough of Brooklyn in New York City. The cemetery was founded in 1838 and is now considered a National Historic Landmark. It was one of the first rural cemeteries in America, and it attracts so many visitors per year. It is 478 acres, and there are over 500,000 permanent resting spot residents, so to speak. And I'm so excited that I got to record my first Third Eyesight episode in a cemetery, especially in time for October. So here I am in Greenwood Cemetery on Third Eyesight. My name is Juan Francisco, and I'm a psychic medium and tarot card reader. I've always been curious about the supernatural, the paranormal, and psychic abilities, and I'm here to share my stories and interview folks who want to share their own stories with us. Let's get to it. Hello, everybody. I am speaking to you from Greenwood Cemetery in Brooklyn. For those of you watching on YouTube, I am sitting in front of a family tomb, and I did pray for respect. I prayed that I was going to do this out of respect and not to do any harm to the family's tomb, and to do this in the spirit, no pun intended, in the spirit of honoring the spirit world and talking about cemeteries in the spirit world. And for those of you who are watching on YouTube, I'm holding my microphone because I couldn't find my mic stand at home. And actually it worked out to hold this microphone because even if I had the microphone stand, it would have been too short to prop up somewhere for me to talk like this to you on camera, for those of you watching the video. And I have my iPad here recording the audio, so this is the best way I can do this without my desktop computer to record an episode. So I have been here to Greenwood Cemetery before in the past, and it is a beautiful, gorgeous, huge cemetery in the borough of Brooklyn in New York City. There are many famous people buried here, many notable figures, many of them Civil War soldiers, other veterans of the past of American history, some actors and actresses, artists like Jean-Michel Basquiat, Leonard Bernstein, or Bernstein. I think I might have been mispronouncing it. I think it's Leonard Bernstein. And there are also some baseball players, and I might have a family member who is here. I've seen his internment once before at a mausoleum here, but I can't seem to figure out or remember where it was. Although I have an idea. I might go visit it today. There's also, I just saw the resting place of, I think her name is Anna Leah Fox, who married and changed her surname, but she was one of the Fox sisters. So there were two Fox sisters in upstate New York and Rochester, New York, who they've been credited with being part of the launch of the American spiritualist movement. And I just read on findagrave.com, which is a great website, that Anna Leah Fox, while her two sisters were becoming popular for their self-professed mediumship and spiritual contact with the other side, she was also professing herself to be a medium. Now, I don't know much about the Fox sisters and how fake or how real they were, but a lot of folks think they were fake because they would do things like, knock twice if you're here in this home with us, and they would kind of do these public seances of people and invite them into this home where they would do these seances. From what I remember learning in history, and also I used to do public relations for that area of New York, so I learned a bit about that history through doing that work, with the upstate part of New York. So some people believe they were fake, that they were not real. Who knows? But I have a feeling that there was probably some truth to what they were doing. Maybe they fabricated a little bit. It's very possible. But I just find it interesting that these two sisters, and then as well as this third sister, we could probably credit for being a large part or playing a large role in the launch of the American spiritualist movement. And the spiritualist movement, kind of coincided with the post-Civil War era, a time when people were grieving the loss of so many people who had died in the Civil War and wanting to connect with that other side, with their loved ones in the other side, on the other side. And so here comes the American spiritualist movement as an answer to that. So I wanted to hit on, and I think I've hit on this before in a past episode, the spookiness or lack thereof of cemeteries and graveyards. I don't feel spooked out being here. Of course, I'm a little bit aware. Like, I know there are dead human bodies everywhere all around, just underground or in a mausoleum somewhere, or in a family tomb like this one behind me. But it doesn't really spook me out. I just get hyper aware that there are human bodies around me. But it doesn't really hit me until I'm like in the cemetery for a long time. And then it starts to feel like, wow, there's a lot of death here. And I really don't feel like it's a scary place to be. Now, as I was telling my boyfriend last night, I won't sleep overnight in a cemetery. No, thank you. Although, a cemetery like this that's surrounded by so much nature, I might feel like so many trees, rather, not nature. It's in the middle of a city, but I might feel a little more comfortable if I were with a group, not by myself. But I think it's not for me like the wisest idea to spend overnight in a cemetery because I grew up with so much spooky content and scary movies. So my mind's gonna create these ideas, staying overnight in the middle of the night in a cemetery, especially that witching hour people talk about, right? The 1 a.m., 2 a.m., 3 a.m. Your mind can play tricks on you. My mind has definitely played tricks on me in my life after watching many scary movies. So I don't feel spooked out being here. If anything, it just feels so peaceful. And I was also telling my boyfriend this last night that I don't feel scared in a cemetery because everyone's at peace here. Everything's so still here. And if anything, I don't think. I mean, I believe that a soul can be wherever it wants to be or in different places at once. It can be with its family and at its burial site at one time. So if I'm here and like let's say I have a deceased relative and I visit their internment in a cemetery and I pray to that relative. Well, that relative is right here with me as I'm at their grave site. It doesn't mean that when my mother is praying to that same relative across the country at that same time for whatever reason that they're not also with my mother. So souls can be at different places at once. So with that being said, I really don't think that me as a visitor, like I don't know the Gray. I'm looking at a cemetery, gravestone here, the Gray family. I don't know the Gray family. If I'm at this gravesite with the Gray family, I may call on them and say like, "Hey, thank you for allowing me to be in your space," and they'll be here listening. But I think they would rather be like, I personally think if they're going to show their presence or evidence of their presence, they rather do it with their descendants who are still living rather than with me, some random guy, because I won't connect in the same way. So in terms of hauntings at a cemetery or crazy activity, I think it's very possible. I've seen videos of these things happening because I think there are probably souls that want to be heard and want to be literally seen, want to feel understood. And so they reach out to humans, any humans, to feel heard and understood and seen. But I think for the most part, they don't really need to show up for us here if we're not related to them. I think they would rather be with their family or in their own homes, visiting their descendants, or in their old homes where there's maybe a new tenant or resident, just to check out, like, what's my home like today? Not be here with random Juan Francisco they don't know from a sack of beans. But it doesn't mean they can't also be here. So it's like, it's a little confusing what I'm saying, I'm sure, to some of you. But I just don't think because there is a place where there are dead physical bodies, that doesn't mean that that place is necessarily haunted. People have died in many places across the country, across the world. So wouldn't that make every single place we step into haunted? Not necessarily. I think so much plays into whether a place is haunted or not. It could be human imagination that we're making up the hauntings based on things we know that are spooky or we think are spooky based on the movies and books, science fiction, horror stories. And then there's the other part where well, like, I don't know if it's so much a haunting when those things happen as much as they are like spirit wanting to let their presence be known. And it's scary to us because a knock on the door out of nowhere when no one's at the door freaks us out. Based on what we've learned in our culture about ghosts and spirits, it freaks us out. It would freak me out. And so I think the other side of the coin is, well, I do believe that we have free will choice on the other side. So when I pass, if I feel like my identity is so wrapped up in my materialistic things, the things that I own, the money that I had, I may just want to stay in the physical world even as a soul. And that's when people might think my soul is stuck. But I am just deciding, I want to stay here because I don't want to let go. Doesn't mean I'm stuck. I'm deciding. I can always decide to go to the light. And that's why I think it's helpful when there is a soul that it has decided to stay behind and not approach the light. It's important for those of us who are here to encourage that soul and pray for that soul to go to the light. Doesn't mean it's lost or stuck. At least that's what I believe today. My belief can always change. It just means that it has decided, it has made a decision to stay around. And again, that may not be a haunting. It just wants to stay around and say hello or interact with its items, its materialistic things, with its doll, with its money or coins in a bag. You know, so many possibilities. Now, I can't speak for or speak about like evil entities or demons because I don't like to give that all energy. I believe it's possible that those exist. Or let's say you have a grandfather who was not a nice man, and he never made amends, and he passes, and he is an angry spirit, an angry soul on the other side. I don't know if that's... Well, I might bite my tongue here because I was going to say I don't know if that's possible for that to happen. But if I think anything is possible, then anything is possible. So I'm not pretending to have all the answers. I'm just kind of thinking out loud. But based on what I've watched many ghost adventures, well, the TV show, but also lowercase ghost, lowercase adventures. Many of those on TV, on YouTube, and ghost tours, investigations. I've been on investigations, and I've heard the stories of this woman in white is spooking people and yells at people to get out of her house. Like, we have to ask ourselves, well, if we are entering a space of respect, the spirit world is going to return the same energy. If I go into someone's house and that person's passed and I say, come on, mofo, make some noise. Of course. I mean, if you were the owner of a house, wouldn't you say, get out of my house? Wouldn't you maybe yell it? There's a plane overhead. Doing this outside. It's the real deal. No editing. And I'm not editing this. So wouldn't you yell, you better get out of my house? I would. And sometimes maybe there are stories. I haven't really delved into these kinds of stories where people enter a space of respect, and yet the returning energy is evil or unkind. Maybe it's possible. I don't know. But what I'll say for being in a cemetery, I've never really felt spooked in a cemetery. The only time I felt spooked in a cemetery, and it's because of environmental factors. I was in Sleepy Hollow Cemetery, and that's exactly what it sounds like. It's the cemetery famous for the story of the Headless Horseman. They say the Headless Horseman is buried in the cemetery, that he was a Hessian soldier from... Hessian, I think, has to do with Germany, I believe, but I'm not sure. A Hessian soldier that passed away, who was beheaded, and they say he has an unmarked grave in the cemetery. Sleepy Hollow Cemetery, besides that legend... Is this microphone? The microphone is on. Good. Besides that legend of the Headless Horseman, Sleepy Hollow Cemetery is a gorgeous, beautiful cemetery. And I took one of my good friends there one day. We had a car that I was renting, or maybe it was her car, and we got stuck. The cemetery closed and the gates locked, and we were stuck, and the sun had gone down. And it was darker than twilight. Not fully dark outside, but it was darker than twilight. It was creepy. But see... I was creeped out only because it was getting dark and there were no lights in that cemetery. During the daytime, I felt just fine, and I've been to that cemetery a couple times in the daytime, and I feel just fine. Wandering around by myself feels great. And even here, I'm here in this cemetery, and, you just might have heard another plane just pass over my head, but even though there are noises around me, there's something very still and silent about the energy around me. And it doesn't mean that there isn't a presence. I'm not saying that there are no souls at cemeteries. I just don't think they're here to, haunt us. That's my belief, though. But hey, maybe in this video that you're watching on YouTube, or in this podcast that you're listening to in your earphones or on speaker, maybe something will happen. That would be cool. I would love for something to happen in this podcast episode in the cemetery, but I've never had something happen to me in a cemetery. I really haven't. So another thing I gotta say, it is really hot in New York City today, and I've been walking around for an hour and a half, maybe an hour, in the cemetery, and I've been fanning myself. with this guidebook that's in my left hand here. And it's just been, oof, it's so hot. And I was thinking, I've never been to New Orleans, and I was also talking to my boyfriend last night about the main famous cemetery in New Orleans, and I can only imagine how hot it is to tour that cemetery, which I've heard you should tour with a group, not by yourself. But anyways, I'm going off topic. But yeah, I just adore cemeteries. I think what's fascinating to me, me with my fear of death. And for those of you who are not aware of this fear I have, I did do a whole podcast episode on my fear of death and the panic attacks that I sometimes have and used to often have as a child about death. I know it's ironic, and I won't explain it here because I know I'm a psychic medium, y'all. But that episode on panic attacks about death and fear of death and dying really explains my feelings about death and my anxiety about death. So given that anxiety I have about death and the other side, or what it is to be on the other side, I think what I find fascinating about cemeteries is how we decide to honor those who have passed. How we decide to... Sorry if you heard me bump the microphone just now and it was a bump in your ear. How we decide to honor those who have passed, and how we decide to design the headstones. Like, I wonder who designed the first headstone. Isn't that interesting? Or who was behind the idea of putting people in rows? Because other cultures will just cremate folks, and other cultures will bury folks in other ways. But we're used to, maybe this is a European thing. I'm not quite sure. I should do some research on this. Although in Japan, I don't know how far this goes back in Japan, but in Tokyo, I saw a cemetery laid out very similarly. People in rows that you can walk down and find your loved one. So I find it fascinating how we decide to honor those who have passed, and how death and dying is such a mystery, even though some of us may feel like we know what it's like or what it might be like based on our personal near-death experience, or based on mediumship and channeling. Even though we might feel like we know what happens, we really, really don't, unless we've had the first-hand experience. We're just channeling what we are told, right? Now, those who have had a near-death experience, even then, each near-death experience can be very different, with some similarities amongst those different experiences, like a tunnel that people see, their life flashing before their eyes, seeing their loved ones upon arrival. But some of those stories can be very different. Some people see a bunch of colors, some people hear beautiful music, some people see a bright light, sometimes all the above. I think I just heard thunder, and I should be wrapping this up soon. So, I think with death being such a, I'm going to call it a mystery just in terms of like the world view, like how our planet with all its different cultures, religions, and spiritual beliefs, if you look at all that from a 360 bird's eye view, death is still a mystery to many of us and to most of our world. And to many, it's a scary mystery. So it's interesting to me how we've put together graveyards and cemeteries and mausoleums, how we've designed honoring those who have passed, how we've designed the intention of honoring those who have passed is very interesting to me. So many different ways that a cemetery can be designed, and I have so many that I want to visit, like Hollywood Forever in California that has a lot of movie stars of the golden era of Hollywood. I find that just so fascinating also, that here are people who were idols to many of us in past in history. Like, I've seen the grave, the burial, the resting place, pardon me, of Marilyn Monroe, of Harry Houdini, who's here in New York City and Queens, in my borough where I live. These are people who are legendary, who have made such a huge name for themselves in the culture, both American culture and the global culture. And they're right there. And it reminds me how when we visit a cemetery, we see someone famous, it reminds me that this famous person is right next to this other family that were not famous at all. They were just a regular family. Average Joes, average Janes, average people. And I think cemeteries remind me of how human we all are. All of us really are equal when we get right down to our nature, the core nature of who we are. And the fame, the fortune, the money, it may get you a beautiful mausoleum, and all respect to this family behind me in this mausoleum, in this family tomb, but they are of the same matter, physical matter. in there as the folks out here who are not in a big, beautiful family tomb. And I think it's almost like death is an equalizer. And that sounds a little morbid, but it really is. And it's not to say that it takes death to make us all feel equal or equitable as humans, right? And the way we function with each other, interact with each other. But it's a reminder that we really all go to the same place or to the same physical state. If you don't believe in an afterlife, well, we all go to the same physical state. And I do believe we all go to the same afterlife. It may look different for some of us based on our free will choices and our mindset at the time of dying, but we really all go to the same place. I do believe that. And on the other side, I believe we have free will. And I also believe that reincarnation is possible. So we all undergo the same experiences. So what makes one person better than another? No one person is better than another. And I think a cemetery really reminds me of that. There are thousands, I'm sure thousands, I don't know how many thousands, but it feels like there are thousands of people in the cemetery. That's a lot of people, and from all walks of life. Poor, rich, actors, bankers, gangsters, sportsmen, mediums, even, I just visited the grave of the medium, right? Of the one of the Fox sisters. All of them, different walks of life. And they're all here. They're all here. So I'm excited I got to do a podcast episode from the cemetery. And I actually got this idea as a recommendation. I've been thinking about doing this for a long time. But someone on Instagram recommended this idea to me, and I said, "Oh, I should do that. I've been meaning to do it, so thanks for reminding me." So here I am. And what's funny is yesterday I was talking to my boyfriend about cemeteries, and then I was thinking about that Instagram DM from that person, and here I am. Now I wonder if I can sit for a little bit in silence, maybe for a minute or two, and just see what I get while I'm here. And there's no way to be evidential because whatever I get here, we can't prove unless I say a name and then I walk around and find that name. Then I'll let y'all know in the next episode. That would be wild. But for the most part, I'm just going to see what I get and just be open. And maybe I'll be able to channel a message for the collective. So first I'm going to say that thank you to the spirit world for allowing me to be here today. I know I'm meant to be here today because I am here recording this episode. And even without recording this episode, I would have been here enjoying this beautiful cemetery and this beautiful way to honor those who have passed before us. I want to thank the souls who are here and present for allowing me to be here. I do this in respect, or out of respect, rather. I do this out of respect for you and your legacy and for your state in the spirit world. And I pray for nothing but the light of God and the light, capital L light, to be present here with me and with us. And I pray for the presence of Archangel Michael for protection, Archangel Gabriel for communication, and Archangel Raphael for healing. And I'm just imagining this blue sapphire light of Archangel Michael around me and around you, the listener, or you, the watcher of this video. Immediately, a woman named Jane came into my mind's eye. And she does feel like she is of a distant past. So I wonder if I'll find a Jane walking around today. Let me just sit for a moment. And I'm getting this feeling that I passed from an illness. So something that I've noticed recently is that when they tell me cancer, usually it's either literally cancer, the illness of cancer, or it's a similar illness that either starts in one place and spreads quickly, or something that just was diagnosed and the person passed very quickly. So I feel like this woman Jane might have passed from an illness that today we might have a lot of treatment for, but at that time there wasn't really a good answer or a good path to treatment. because it was the distant past. Because I feel like I'm undergoing these operations or procedures that today we would find unnecessary or not the right thing to do. Not in terms of ethical, just like not the best approach, right? And that's how I'm feeling. I'm feeling discomfort. Not that there isn't discomfort in treatments today to sicknesses when someone undergoes treatment, but it's a different type of discomfort that I don't recognize, or that doesn't seem like people undergo very much today. I just wanted to focus on the cemetery. It's like my mind was like just went blank, and that's okay. I do need to go very soon, but I'm kind of curious. I wonder if I could take my, let's see, I'm going to take my iPad with me. And those of you on video, I'm taking the video camera with me. Y'all seeing my pretty legs. Oop! Almost dropped my pencil. And I'm wondering if there is a Jane in this mausoleum. I see John. 2 Johns. Oh, I don't know what that is. Hope y'all can hear me. I see Edna. I think a Mary. Horatio. I can't read the other names. I cannot read the other names. I think I see an Anna. Henry. Yeah, there are a lot of them, but I don't think I see a Jane. But I do have the last name of the family, which is, oh, what's their last name? Mollenhauer. So I may look that up later to see if I find a Jane that's in the family out of curiosity. I'm not banking on it because I didn't really prepare well to channel today in the cemetery. I was planning to do it, but I was like, I don't know if I'm going to do it. But with that, let me just quickly close this up. Thank you, Spirit, for allowing us to be here today. Thank you for letting me honor you and your legacy. And thank you so much for your kindness, for your stillness, and for your peace. And I pray that any souls that are not in the light, I pray that God and the light of God embraces those spirits and welcomes them into the light so they know that it's safe to be in the light. And I thank God, I thank the universe for the opportunity to do this podcast episode here today and to allow me to visit this beautiful, wonderful, wonderful honor of a cemetery and a landmark in New York City, allowing me to do that today. And so for those who have not yet visited Greenwood Cemetery in Brooklyn, I highly recommend it. Add it to your list when you travel to New York City. It's easier to have a car to journey around this place, but if you can walk, do the walk. I'm going to get out of here before it starts raining, and I will see you on the next episode. If you have a question or topic you want me to cover on Third Eyesight, head to my website, juanfranciscospirit.com/contact, and send a message my way. If you really enjoyed this episode, leave a review wherever you listen. I'd really appreciate it.